Good morning and welcome to One Baha'i, that regular show where I just share a few personal thoughts about the Baha'i faith. It's nothing official, it's just me, one individual, one Baha'i. Well, this morning I wanted to take a look at Call of the Divine Beloved, the Four Valleys, the Fourth Valley. You know, I remember years ago I was listening to an eminent scholar of the Baha'i faith talk about the Four Valleys, and he expressed his, I don't know if it was discomfort or disappointment with the original translation. He said that they weren't just valleys, that Baha'u'llah describes them in such a way that there is an elevation or a nearness that gets closer and closer with each valley. And as I was reading it just now, something struck me, so I kind of have to put it into a context. The first valley is, if the wayfarers be among them that seek after the sanctuary of the desired one. The second valley begins, if the wayfarers be among them that dwell in the court of the all-praised. Oh, and this is the new translation, by the way. So in the first one, they are seeking the sanctuary. In the second valley, they dwell in the court. In the third valley, it's, if the lovers be among them that abide within the precincts of the abode of the lodestone of hearts. So you can see this drawing nearer that he is describing, that the scholar described. And as I was trying to wrap my head around the fourth valley, I noticed that it begins, if the mystic knowers be among them that have attained the beauty of the beloved. So in the first valley, you're seeking, you're looking for that sanctuary. In the second valley, you dwell within the court. Now the court is actually, it's like a courtyard, it's outside. You're dwelling in the courtyard, if in a sense. In the third one, you abide within the precincts, so you're living there. In the fourth one, you've actually attained. The first valley, I sort of loosely described it as looking for God within the self. The second valley, I loosely described it as looking for God through the intellect. In the third valley, you're looking for God through love. You find God through loving others. But in this fourth valley, it's quite different. Sorry about that. Come on, George. My cat wanted to come up here. Oh, yes, Georgie. Hi. One moment, I have to move this just a bit so that I can move over just a bit to give my cat someplace to sit. There we go. If the mystic knowers be among them that have attained the beauty of the beloved, this station is the throne of the inmost heart and the secret of divine guidance. This is the seat of the mystery. He doeth what he willeth and ordaineth what he pleaseth. That quote was mentioned by Tahare as the greatest mystery of the messenger of God. He doeth what he willeth and ordaineth what he pleaseth. When we understand that, we have achieved an understanding of the station of the messenger of God that is, in a sense, quite profound, I think. I'm not sure. It always puzzles me that people don't understand that. But I mean, I'm looking at it retrospectively. I'm seeing the example of Baha'u'llah. I'm seeing the example of the Bab. And I guess for people who haven't, they feel that they know what the messenger of God can do or will do. But the thing is that the messenger of God does whatever they want. They do whatsoever they willeth. There's the story of Sayyid Kazim talking to one of the disciples. And he said, suppose the messenger of God appears, and he says that the imams were not the true ones following Muhammad. What would you do? And his students said, oh, God forbid, the messenger of God could never say this. Well, that student later became one of the enemies of the Bab, because he didn't realize that the Bab could do whatever he wanted. The Bab could say whatever he wanted. Whatever he said was the truth. Whatever he did was the right way to act. If the mystic knowers be among them that have attained the beauty of the beloved, as I read this valley, I guess I would sum it up as intuition. Recognizing God through your intuitive process. You see, I've long been of the opinion that whatever God is in the capital, we are in the lowercase. If God is the all-knowing, we have some knowledge. If God is the all-merciful, we could show some mercy. That first valley alludes to that in the sense that if you look within, you can find God. God may be in the uppercase, but we can see God in the lowercase within us. The second valley is the intellect. God is the all-knowing, where we can achieve an understanding of God through knowledge. The third valley is love. God is the all-loving, where we can recognize God through some love. Here, the messenger of God moves according to God's will, intuitively. Everything that they do is from God. I remember years ago I was talking with some friends. We were doing a study circle of a sort. And I don't remember how we got onto this idea, but we were talking about how everything in creation is a metaphor for a spiritual truth. And I challenged them. I said, find those truths. You know, Baha'u'llah says, he uses the metaphors of flowers, of trees. He uses all sorts of metaphors. I said, everything can be seen as a metaphor for God. Everything. I said, if there's something that you find, share your metaphor. If you don't understand how it's a metaphor, bring it to the group. We'll work it out. Well, one guy came and he said, okay, computer mouse. How is a computer mouse a metaphor for a spiritual truth? I had no idea. But the group, we consulted on it. And one person came up with the idea that, actually it came up, 5 or 6 people came up with this whole concept. It was, we are all icons on a computer screen, moving around, doing what we will. But the messenger of God is the cursor. And when they click on something, when they click on an icon, it transforms, everything changes. It opens up the program. So we look at this cursor on the computer screen of life, and we say, wow, you're a cursor. And the messenger of God says, well, yes, that's true, but my reality is that I'm a computer mouse, and I am moved by the hand of God. I thought that was a really beautiful analogy, a beautiful metaphor of a messenger of God. And when I read this valley, that's kind of how I envision it. When we move according to God's will, when we allow that intuition to guide us, recognizing, of course, the laws of God, recognizing, of course, courtesy and compassion, and not acting according to our whims, but striving to act in obedience to God, then that also can be a way to better understand our Creator. He goes on, he says, whoso comprehendeth this station will assuredly conceal it. And were he to reveal but the faintest trace thereof, they would assuredly hang him from the gallows. And yet, by God, were a true seeker to be found, I would divulge it to him. So he's acknowledging that when you say you believe, you will be tested. When you claim this station, you will be persecuted. But he goes on and he assures us that were somebody truly seeking, then Baha'u'llah himself would divulge it to him. Now it's interesting he uses the word true seeker, because in the Kitab-i-Iqan, paragraph 216, thereabouts, 216 to 222, somewhere in there, he describes the station of the true seeker. An astonishing station that is worthy of reading. Maybe I'll read it next week. So, would someone to be found who lives according to this nature, a true seeker, then Baha'u'llah would divulge all of this to him. He goes on, this is the longest valley in the four valleys, by the way. He goes on, and he's effectively, in my understanding, he's effectively describing a messenger of God in the fourth valley. This is the realm of pure awareness and utter self-effacement. Not even love can find a way to this plane, nor doth affection have a place therein. So, as he goes through this valley, he describes how each of the previous three valleys have no bearing on this valley. Abiding in the court of rapture, the dwellers of this mansion wield with utmost joy and gladness the scepters of divinity and lordship, and, established upon the lofty seats of justice, they exert their rule and bestow upon every soul its due. That so sounds like a messenger of God to me. Those who drink of this cup abide beneath the canopy of glory, above the throne of the Ancient of Days, and dwell upon the seat of grandeur beneath the tabernacle of majesty. And there's such a mystery in this chapter. At every moment a new condition will be displayed. Yet that condition is ever the same. Wherefore he saith in one instance, nothing whatsoever keepeth him from being occupied with any other thing. And in another he saith, verily his ways differ every day. It seems to me, in these valleys, over and over, Baha'u'llah is describing the ideal. Here, he is describing that ideal station of a messenger of God, the way that the messenger of God moves through the world. And I have to ask myself, how can we emulate that in the lower case? If they are the messenger of God, how can we deliver this message? And honestly, I truly believe it is saying our prayers, striving to align ourselves with the will of God, praying for those opportunities, and when we encounter that seeking soul, to be open to those divine channels that can guide us. Quite often when I say my prayers and when I pray for that teaching opportunity and I recognize that I have met someone, there have been so many times where a word or a phrase just popped out and it moved them, and I had no idea why or how. But I think it was that wily concourse on high whacking me upside the head, making me spit that word out. I'm reminded of the Hand of the Cause, Dorothy Baker. Was it Dorothy Baker or was it Martha Root? No, there's Martha Root, I think. I don't know. One of the two. She was in a city, and she was supposed to go to a radio interview, and she was told that the radio manager hated the Baha'is. And they told her to exercise caution, and she says, "It's okay, I'm in God's hands." And she's walking to the station, and she stopped in at a florist and picked up a bunch of tulips. She said she was just moved to pick up some tulips. So she grabbed a bunch of tulips, went to the station, encountered this manager who was hostile to the faith, gave him the tulips, and said, "Hello, I'm here for the interview." And his eyes lit up, and he said, "How did you know that I was Dutch? I love tulips. They're my favorite flower." And he became a great friend of the faith ever since. So we can approach God through the self. We can approach God through the intellect. We can approach God through love. But when we allow that divine hand to move us, that's when the true miracles begin to occur. So thank you for joining me this morning. I know it was a bit longer than usual, but, well, I just tend to ramble when I don't know what I'm talking about. So, thank you very much. I really hope you enjoy your weekend. Click the like button, subscribe if you feel like it, you know all the usual stuff. We'll be well and safe this weekend, and enjoy the holy days, commemorations. We'll talk next week.